My wife cheated on me with her boss, stole $200, $0 from our joint account, then disappeared with the house and our kids, only to come back claiming I'm the one who's in the wrong in court. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this, but here I am. It all started with little things. Sarah, my wife, always had a sharp tongue and a bitchy attitude when she didn't get her way, but lately it was like she was a different person. She'd come home late more often, excuse herself with some vague story about work, and I'd catch her sneaking her phone around like she was hiding something. I didn't want to believe it at first, but deep down I could feel it. Something was off. One night I decided to check her phone. I know that's a violation of privacy, but I was desperate. I had this gut feeling. She was hiding something, and frankly, I didn't trust her anymore. I grabbed her phone while she was in the shower, and as soon as I unlocked it, my stomach dropped. There were messages, flirty, suggestive texts with her boss, Mark. I saw things like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "You're so good at pretending nothing's going on." I even saw photos of her in bed with him, half naked, her lipstick smudged, her hair messy. I couldn't believe it. My wife cheating on me with her own boss. I was frozen, just staring at the screen. My mind raced. How long has this been going on? How could she lie to my face every day? I felt a surge of anger and betrayal like I'd never experienced before. It was like my world was crashing down around me. I took a screenshot of the messages and put the phone back where I found it, trying to process what I'd just seen. I couldn't sleep that night, replaying everything in my mind, feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The next morning, I confronted her. I waited until she was having her coffee, trying to keep my voice steady. I threw the phone on the table and said, "Who the hell is Mark? Tell me the truth." Sarah's face went pale for a second, then she snapped back with that bitchy attitude she's known for. "What are you talking about? That's just a misunderstanding. You're paranoid." She tried to brush it off, but I wasn't buying it. I told her I knew she'd been cheating and I saw the messages. She scoffed and said, "You're overreacting. It's just sex and it didn't mean anything. Mark's just a friend and you're crazy if you think I'd do something like that. Besides, I've been so busy with work I haven't had time for anything else." But I knew better. I could see the lies in her eyes. It was obvious she'd been caught and she was trying to spin her way out of it. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and disappointment. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like this? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I wanted to scream at her to make her admit everything, but I just sat there stunned. I couldn't believe this was happening. I never thought she'd cheat, especially with her boss. That bastard Mark was always around, acting like he owned the place, but I never thought she'd actually sleep with him. Over the next few days, I kept quiet, trying to figure out what to do. I watched her closely, noticing how she'd hide her phone even more, delete messages, and act like nothing had happened. I started noticing money missing from our joint account. About $200, $0 gone. I couldn't believe it. She had stolen that much money from us. I knew she was planning something, but I didn't realize she'd take everything, including our house and the kids. That was the final blow. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal, and the worst part was, I didn't even know if I could trust myself anymore. I decided I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with this, not just the cheating but the theft as well. I started planning my next move, knowing that this wasn't just about a betrayal anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming what was mine. I didn't know how she was going to spin her way out of this, but I was prepared to fight. I knew I had to be smart, careful, and ruthless if I wanted to get to the truth and make her pay for what she'd done. Would you like me to continue? After I found out about the affair and the money, everything changed. I started digging into our finances more closely. I pulled bank statements, looked into every transaction, every withdrawal. That's when I saw it 200, missing from our joint account. It was gone over the course of a few months. Some of it went to offshore accounts, some of it was transferred to her personal accounts. I couldn't believe she'd gone that far. She had been planning this for a while, I think. That's when I realized she wasn't just cheating on me, she was stealing from us, from our family. The betrayal cut so deep I couldn't even process it. I felt numb at first, then furious. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we built? I knew she was hiding something, but I didn't have proof until now. I started to piece together what she'd been up to. I found receipts for luxury shopping, vacations with Mark, and even some payments to a private investigator she'd hired to dig up dirt on me. That's when I knew she was planning to leave, to disappear with the money and the house. I decided I couldn't just sit back and let her get away with it. I needed a plan. The first step was confronting her again, but this time with concrete evidence. I set up a meeting at a neutral place, told her I knew everything. She looked surprised, but then she got defensive. "Overreacting," she said, smirking. "You don't understand what's going on. I've been stressed and Mark been there for me. It's just sex and it's not a big deal." She lied so easily, like she was reading from some script. I could see she was trying to spin her way out of it, but I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her, "You stole $200, $0 from us. You've been cheating with Mark. You're planning to leave with the house, the kids, everything. How could you do this?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, you're just jealous. Mark and I are just friends. I'm tired of your accusations. You're paranoid. I don't love Mark, I don't love you, and I don't care what you think." That's when I saw her true colors. She was a manipulative bitch who only cared about herself. The more she lied, the more I realized I had to act fast. I started gathering more evidence, texts, emails, bank transfers. I even hired a private investigator to follow her. She was planning her escape, that much was clear. Meanwhile, she kept up the act, pretending to be the loving wife, the caring mother. But I saw through her. I knew she was planning to take the kids and run once she had the money. I couldn't let that happen. I had to protect my children and stop her from destroying everything we had. The emotional toll was enormous. I'd always believed in our marriage, in the vows we took. Now I was questioning everything. Was she even the same person I married? How could she betray me like this? I felt a mixture of heartbreak, anger, and helplessness. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I'd just become another victim for lies. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what she'd done, about the house, the kids, the money. It was like I was living someone else's nightmare. But I knew I couldn't let her win. I had to be strategic. My plan was to get all the evidence I could, then confront her again with everything laid out in court. I knew she'd try to deny everything, spin more lies, but I was ready for that. I also started to think about what I'd do if she tried to take the kids away. I'd fight for custody, no matter what. I'd make sure she couldn't ruin us, not without a fight. All this was just the beginning, and I knew I had to stay strong for me and for the kids. I also started to think about how I'd rebuild after all this chaos. I'd lost my trust, my sense of security, and my money. But I hadn't lost myself. I knew I had to get through this, one step at a time. I wasn't going to let her destroy everything we had. I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. For my family and for my dignity. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about reclaiming my life from someone I once loved but who turned out to be a complete stranger. Would you like me to continue? Once I had enough evidence and a clear picture of what Sarah was up to, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I knew she was planning to vanish with the house, the kids, and whatever money she could grab. I started talking to a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and financial crimes. I needed to understand my options and how to protect myself and the kids from her next move. The more I learned, the angrier I got. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The day I went back to confront her with all my evidence was the day everything exploded. I called her at work, told her to meet me at a coffee shop nearby. When she arrived, she was acting confident, like she had everything under control. I laid out the bank statements, the screenshots of her texts with Mark, the receipts for the vacations, and the proof of her plans to leave. I watched her face drain of color, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. She tried to deny everything, of course. "This is all a mistake," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Someone's framing me. You don't understand how stressful things are, and I was just venting to Mark. It's not what it looks like." I just shook my head. "No, Sarah, I've seen enough. You've been lying to me, stealing from us, and cheating. You're planning to leave with the kids and the money. How could you do this to your own family?" Her reaction was pure rage. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, jealous, insecure. "You're just jealous because Mark doesn't want you anymore. I deserve better than a guy who can't even trust his wife. You're a loser and I'm done pretending everything's fine." She stormed out, leaving me sitting there with my blood boiling. I knew I had to act fast before she made her move. Over the next few days, I worked tirelessly with my lawyer and the private investigator. We filed for an emergency custody hearing, trying to stop her from taking the kids. I also contacted the bank to freeze her accounts and started the process to recover the stolen money. I knew she'd try to hide it, but I had people on her tail. Meanwhile, she was trying to spin stories to friends and family, claiming I was abusive, jealous, and controlling. She painted herself as the victim, as always. The emotional was relentless. I felt anger, betrayal, and a deep sadness I couldn't shake. I'd loved Sarah once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who only cared about herself. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I let her get away with so much. Every time I looked at the kids, I felt a pang in my chest. They didn't deserve any of this. They were innocent in all of this chaos, and I was determined to protect them from her lies and schemes. Her disappearance with the house and the kids was supposed to happen any day now. I was terrified she'd succeed, but I also knew I couldn't let her take everything without a fight. I started to prepare myself for court, collecting every piece of evidence and lining up witnesses who could testify to her manipulative behavior and financial misconduct. I wanted her to see that I was serious about fighting for my family and that I wouldn't let her destroy us without consequences. What hurt the most was feeling helpless. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I felt like I'd been played for a fool. It was a crushing realization that the woman I married, the woman I loved, had turned into someone so different, dishonest, greedy, and willing to ruin everything for her own benefit. I kept telling myself that I'd get through this, that I'd come out stronger on the other side. But the pain of betrayal stayed with me like a shadow I couldn't shake. I also started to question my own judgment. How did I miss all of this? Was I blind or just too trusting? I used to think that love meant giving someone the benefit of the doubt, but now I saw that sometimes that trust can be shattered in an instant. I knew I had to rebuild my life piece by piece and learn to trust my instincts again. For now, I was just trying to stay afloat, holding on to my kids and fighting for what was rightfully ours. Would you like me to continue? The court date was set sooner than I expected, and I knew I had to be prepared. Sarah was already spinning her lies, claiming I was abusive, controlling, and that she was a victim of my supposed bad behavior. She had her lawyer craft some slick stories about how she was just stressed, how Mark was just a friend, and how I was trying to ruin her reputation. It was infuriating to hear her deny everything, especially knowing the truth. The evidence I had was overwhelming: bank transfers, explicit texts, receipts for her vacations with Mark, and even bank statements showing the money being transferred offshore. I spent sleepless nights going over everything, trying to stay calm. I knew she'd do everything she could to win the court's favor, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I had to be sharp, precise, and relentless. My lawyer advised me on how to present the case, emphasizing her financial misconduct, her infidelity, and her intent to abscond with the kids and the house. I knew the judge would see through her lies if I laid everything out clearly. The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. Sarah showed up with her lawyer, looking confident and smug, as if she already knew she was going to win. I felt a mix of anger and determination. When it was my turn, I laid out all the evidence: how she'd stolen $200, $0, how she'd been sleeping with her boss, and her plans to leave us behind. I explained how she tried to manipulate the situation, paint me as the bad guy, and how she was trying to take the kids away to start a new life with Mark and the stolen money. Sarah's lawyer tried to argue that I was unstable, that I was trying to manipulate the court. But I had witnesses ready: friends who saw her secret meetings with Mark, neighbors who overheard her arguing about the money, and me, with my detailed records. When I looked at Sarah, she was sweating, trying to hold her composure, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew she was cornered. The judge listened carefully, asking questions about the evidence, the money, and her plans. In the end, the court granted me temporary custody of the kids, froze her assets, and ordered her to return the stolen money. But I knew this wasn't over. Sarah was furious. She threw a tantrum outside the courtroom, screaming that I was ruining her life, that I was a jealous, controlling man who was trying to keep her from being happy. She said she'd fight this all the way, and I believed her. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the kind of desperation that makes people do crazy things. After the court, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I had taken a stand and the court recognized my claims. Dread because I knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. She was already plotting her next move, I was sure of it. She started making calls, trying to rally her supporters, spinning stories about how I was a monster who was trying to destroy her. It was like living in a nightmare, but I refused to back down. I also started thinking about the future, how I was going to rebuild trust with my kids, how I was going to recover from the financial and emotional damage. I knew I'd need therapy, support from friends, and a lot of time to heal. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let her destroy what little stability I had left. I was going to fight for my family, for my dignity, and for the truth. The aftermath was chaotic. Sarah disappeared for a few days, then reappeared claiming she was sorry and wanted to make amends. But I wasn't buying it. I told her she had to face the consequences, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I also started looking into rebuilding the financial mess she'd left behind, trying to recover what I could and planning how to move forward without her. I knew this was just the beginning of a long battle, but I was ready for it. I had to be. For myself, for my kids, and for what was left of the life I thought I knew. Would you like me to continue? The weeks that followed the court hearing were some of the most draining of my life. Sarah was still around, but she wasn't done trying to turn the tables. She kept calling, texting, trying to guilt me into working things out. But I wasn't having it. I saw through her every word, her fake tears, her manipulative pleas. She'd spin stories about how she was sorry, how she'd made a mistake, and how she wanted to fix everything. But I knew better. I knew that her apologies were just another tactic to buy time, to try and sway me or the court. Meanwhile, the financial mess was a nightmare. I worked tirelessly with my lawyer and a forensic accountant to trace the stolen money. Some of it had already been laundered, but we managed to recover a significant portion, enough to start rebuilding what she'd taken. I also took steps to freeze her remaining assets, prevent her from selling the house, and set up protections for the kids. It was clear she was planning to run away again, maybe even with the house, but I was determined to stop her. One day, I found out she was secretly meeting with Mark again. I caught wind of it from a neighbor who saw her sneaking out at night. That was the last straw. I decided I had to confront her directly. I met her at the house which I now owned. Outright again, thanks to the court's order. I told her she needed to leave, that I was done playing her games. She tried to deny everything, but I had receipts, messages, and witnesses. I told her she had no choice but to accept that her manipulations weren't going to work anymore. Her reaction was classic Sarah, bitchy, full of lies and full of anger. She screamed, called me names, accused me of trying to control her. "You're just jealous. Mark's the only one who ever cared about me," she spat. I looked at her, tired and disgusted. I told her I'd done everything to save our marriage, but her lies and greed had destroyed it. I told her she was done using me and the kids as pawns. That was the day I finally pushed her out for good. She packed her bags, shouting she'd see me in court, but I didn't care. I knew I had the upper hand now. The hardest part was telling the kids. They were confused, scared, and angry. I tried to be honest without overwhelming them, but it was tough. I promised them I'd protect them, and I'd do everything I could to give them stability. I also started therapy for myself and the kids to help us process what had happened. It was a long road, but I knew I had to stay strong for them. I couldn't let Sarah's chaos tear us apart completely. I also started rebuilding my life. I found a new place to live, closer to work and the kids' schools. I focused on my job, trying to keep everything together. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, but I refused to let it define me. I learned a lot about trust, about who really cared, and about the importance of protecting myself and my family. I cut ties with anyone who tried to defend Sarah or downplay her actions. I wanted real, honest people around me now. Looking back, I realize I was lucky I caught her early, even if it was painful. The process has been brutal, but I'm starting to see some light. I know I'll never forget what she did, but I'm learning to move on. I still have scars, but I also have my kids, my dignity, and a new outlook on life. Trust is hard to rebuild after all this, but I'm determined not to let her betrayal destroy me completely. I still have hope that someday I'll find peace and happiness again, without her lies, her greed, and her manipulations. Would you like me to continue with the final part? Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much I've been through, how betrayal can come from the person you trust most, and how it can shatter your world in an instant. But I also see the lessons in all of it. Sarah's actions showed me the importance of vigilance, of protecting your own interests, and of never blindly trusting someone just because they say they love you. I learned that sometimes, love isn't enough to hold a relationship together when greed and lies are involved. Getting through the legal battles, the deception, and the heartbreak has made me stronger. I've come to accept that I can't change what happened, but I can control how I respond. I've learned to be cautious, to listen to my instincts, and to value honesty above all else. The scars of her betrayal will stay with me, but I refuse to let them define me. Instead, I see this as a wake-up call, an opportunity to rebuild my life on a foundation of trustworthiness, honesty, and respect. My kids are doing better now. They're resilient, and I make sure they know they're loved unconditionally. We're healing together, and I'm committed to giving them the stability they need. I've also started focusing on myself, picking up hobbies I'd abandoned, reconnecting with friends, and planning for a future that doesn't include her. It's not easy. It's a daily struggle. But every day I choose to keep moving forward, I get a little stronger. Looking back, I realized that revenge wasn't the goal. That was just my initial impulse. What I really wanted was justice, closure, and to protect what little was left of our family. I know now that true strength is in rising above the chaos, in refusing to be dragged down by lies and greed. I hope anyone else going through something similar learns to trust their gut, stand their ground, and never let someone's betrayal define who they are. This experience has changed me forever. I see the world differently now, more cautious, more aware, but also more determined. I still believe in love and honesty, but I know I have to be careful. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the biggest victory is simply surviving and rebuilding after being knocked down so hard. I'm not perfect, and I've got a long road ahead, but I'm finally on the right track. And for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm starting to find peace. Without her, without the lies, and without the chaos she brought into my life.